Hi there, and thank you for tuning in to watch the August 2022 Meetup recording of Romania Power BI and Modern Excel user group. Thank you for your interest in our user group sessions, and I hope you'll find this presentation helpful. You'll learn something new out of it, and you'll join us for our next meetups. This is the recording of our 19th meetup, where Chandeep Chabbra has returned to our user group with another great session on how to use Excel to debug complex DAX. It is the second visit from Chandeep. His first one was last year in June, presenting on some Power Query, and the intro for this session is a bit different than all the other ones because I forgot to start recording right from the start. I hope you'll enjoy it, and if you do, please don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date with all our future meetups. Enjoy. In September, on the 29th of September, we have Chris Webb. We haven't defined yet the details of the session, but he's accepted our invitation, and he'll be joining our meetup group. And then in October, we will have, on the 27th of October, we'll have Matthew Roach with a session on data culture, and I'm really looking forward for both of them because both Chris and Matthew are part of Power BI customer advisory team, and they are gurus in the field. In terms of our past meetups, we have almost all the sessions recorded, and if you want to check any of them, please go to bit.ly ropag_history, and you have all the details there. As I said, starting last year in August, actually it's 1 year already, we have a special partnership with Enterprise DNA, who is our primary official sponsor. They have some incredible learning resources on Enterprise DNA portal. The portal is just upgrading in the next 2 weeks, I think. And Enterprise DNA is sponsoring every ROPAG meetup with 3 free access 1-year membership licenses. We were the first user group in the world to have this, and I'm really glad that any of you, all of you, can be can win one of these memberships. In order to participate, to get one of the membership, please scan the QR code and fill up this form. Make sure you check the box for participating in the raffle, and in the end we'll have this raffle quickly just before we are closing. In terms of next events, I also want to mention a very good summit that is coming in September, My Data Summit, which is the world first online conference that unites speakers talking about Microsoft various technologies, focusing on Microsoft Office and Power Platform. It's a 3-day live event organized with Microsoft Product Group speakers, Microsoft MVPs, and community experts. And Chandeep is one of the speakers there. This conference is carefully crafted with 30 sessions that cover Microsoft Office, Power Platform topics, including Excel, Power BI, Power Automate, Power Apps, Power Query, Power Pivot, and DAX, Azure, and everything. It's organized by 2 good friends of mine, Faraz and Ilgar. And if you want to participate, you can have a discount code applying this coupon. You can have a 10% discount code. Another great event that is coming this autumn is, and I want to mention it today, is Bulgaria Excel Days. It's actually the 4th edition of the international conference, Bulgaria Excel Days. It will be on the 11th of November. It's organized by IT Training in Bulgaria, in Sofia, Bulgaria, with the courtesy of Microsoft Bulgaria, and bringing together some of the most famous experts in the field of Microsoft Excel, Power BI, VBA, financial modeling, and data analyst. There are some master classes there, and this is the last conference in 2019. This was the last live conference before the pandemic. I did attend it, and I hope I can attend this year too. But I encourage all of you to, if you can, attend the live event. It's really, really different meeting all the people, and it's different. Totally recommend it. Coming back to the session today, welcome Chandeep, and thanks again for accepting our invitation. As I said before, Chandeep is back for ROPAG. First time it was in June last year, I think. And for who doesn't know Chandeep, he's one of the guys that can make you really understand complex problems, regardless if it's he's explaining advanced M or complex DAX formulas. His blog, Goodly, and his YouTube channel are really, really good resources to learn both Power Query and DAX. And I recommend all of you to subscribe and maybe participate in the Power Query challenges. He just released a new challenge today. As I said, I'm really glad to have you back, and please tell us a few words about you for the ones that don't know you, Chandeep, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Christian, for having me again. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I started the saga of speaking at user groups with your event. So I believe that was the first event for me, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm very glad to be here again. And I see people.
Happy to hear it.
Thank you. I see people in the comments talking about Power Query more than DAX. So hopefully I'll not disappoint you with the session that I have here today.
For sure, now.
With Power Query, it just so happens that because in the last 2 years or so, the projects that I have been working with required me to just cleanse the data a lot. It's just that I've been working with very, very bad data sets. And hence came the need to work extensively with Power Query, build good models so that my DAX is performant. Initially, when I started counterintuitively, I used to fight everything with DAX. And so came the realization at one point in time when the models became very, very slow and non-performant. I had to kind of come up with a better way of building more performant models. And hence the Power Query journey started. So since I found a solution interesting, I shared that on the YouTube channel. People found that interesting and started to think that I am some sort of Power Query guy. It's just that I'm accumulating these problems out of the work that I'm doing for consulting assignments, and they just tend to help people as well. So glad it turned out that way. But happy to kind of talk about DAX. That's what I started with, and I do still like DAX a lot. And in this session today, I personally want to talk about the method that I devised for myself to learn DAX, or at least to visualize DAX in a way that at least it makes me comfortable that the number that I'm getting on the screen can be validated in some way or the other. And I'm not a SQL guy. I don't know any bit of SQL. All that I know is Microsoft Excel and a bit of Power BI here and there. And I just use Excel to debug every little and big problem that I have. So I'm going to be talking about simple to slightly more technical problems that you might face in Power BI, especially to debug your calculation and to construct the logic of your calculations. That how do you do that? So I'll be talking about that. How can you use Excel to go under the hood and take a look at what's happening? That's part one. Or perhaps if you are thrown a problem and you don't know where to start, how can you start to think in terms of Excel and then come up with a solution that works in Power BI? So that's what this is session all about. There is nothing wrong or right about it. It's just my personal journey of learning the way things that I mean, in a particular way that I learn things. I'm just sharing that. I hope you find this helpful. I've said a lot about the session, but just a quick note about me in case you don't know me. Pretty much, Christian has described everything about me. My name is Chandeep. I write a blog at goodly.co.in. I do some YouTubing on my channel. You can just Google search on Goodly, on YouTube at Goodly, and you will find me. Apart from that, I do some consulting and training work for some companies, and that keeps the house running. Okay, so let's just jump over to some sessions that I have prepared. Okay, sorry, this is bad. Okay, so the thing is that when you're starting to learn DAX, the very first concept that you will come across is nothing but filter context. And I want to demonstrate to you that you can actually take a look at filter context happening within Excel, and you can visualize that. I'm working with a very simple data model here. I have a sales table, and I have a products table, and I have a calendar table. And if you take a look at the granularity of the sales table, it's very simple, regular sales data. So we have some sort of transactions right here. We have the date, we have some payout date, region, product, channel, order, affiliate code, and the units. Now, we do have the units, but we don't really have the sales, like the selling point or the MRP, you can call it. And perhaps I'd like to do that. I'd like to do a VLOOKUP from the products table, which is connected through the product ID right here. And maybe I'd like to do a VLOOKUP on the price, multiply the price with the units, and I can get my total sales. Now, if you are any bit familiar with Power BI and DAX, and sure, everybody knows here what are iterative functions. So I'm just going to quickly go ahead and start to write a very simple total sales calculation, which is nothing but this right here. So what I've done is I've written a very simple SumX function, and I'm saying that, hey, go in every single row of the sales table, do a VLOOKUP for the price and multiply the price with the units. And once I drag this calculation, sure enough, I do get my total sales value across the data right here. This is a very simple calculation. I'm just getting to get started with this, but I'd like to go ahead and validate one number. Let's just go validate this particular number, which is 1094 right here. How do I check that? Is this actually true or not? Can I maybe see it in some way? Although I have the measure is pretty straightforward, but I'd like to be able to see it and validate that. And I'm going to be using Excel to help you do that. I'm going to open up Excel right here. And in Excel, I will first of all apply the filters that are currently applied on that data point. So let's just keep it on the side, and let's just keep this on the side, and let's just apply the filters. So if you take a look at this one right here, the filters on this number 1094 is the calendar year of 2011 and the month of March. Now, these two filters are applied on the calendar table. And from the calendar table, these two filters then get propagated to the sales table, something like this. So I just go here to the data model and show it to you. So in your calendar table, what is going to happen is these two filters are going to be applied on the date table. So the year filter is 2011 right here. And the month filter is the month of March. These two filters, 31 days of March, are going to be filtered in the calendar table. And because the calendar table has got one-to-many relationship with the sales table, all of these 31 days that you have in the calendar table are going to then come down to the date column right here and filter all the dates that match anywhere between the 1st of March to the 31st of March. And your sales table will then become smaller. Only after the filters have been applied, then the calculation starts to take place. That's the order. So step one is apply the filters, which is nothing but your filter context or evaluation context, and then you start to do your DAX. Now, all of the work all of the things that I have just said are words. Let's just try to do that. So I'm just going to go here, and using this date, I will just create two more columns. One is the year column, the other one is the month column, and I will start to apply the two filters. So I'm going to say year, and I'm going to say year of this, close this, press enter, drag it down. And then I'll say month and equals to month of this, close this, press down. And I will convert both of these columns into numbers. All right, now let's just apply the filter. The first filter was, let's just go take a look. It was 2011. So let's just apply that filter. So 2011, I hope my computer doesn't crash. 2011 filter applied, and then we apply the month of March filter. And now we are remaining with these sales transactions that are anywhere between the month of March. So it could be any date of the March, but then we have been able to apply the filters on that data. All right. Next, what I'd like to do is I'd like to do a VLOOKUP. Now, once the filters have been applied, I would want to bring in my DAX calculation, which runs after the filters have been applied. So where was my DAX? It was right here. And that's my DAX. I'm just going to say Control C, and I'll open up a notepad, paste that calculation right in here. And that's my DAX. Now it says that on the sales table, not the full sales table, only the March sales table as per the current filter context, only this sales table, go in every single row, and then why don't you do a VLOOKUP of the price, which is this part of the formula, and then multiply that with the units. So I am just going to go ahead and do my VLOOKUP. So I'll say, sorry, I was writing related in Excel, but that is VLOOKUP of product ID, and just move over to the second page. Lock that, column 4 and 0. All right, that's my price VLOOKUP. I drag that formula down and I multiply the units into price, and that is what my calculation is. Now, if I tend to total up all of these values right here, I am going to get that number 1094.56, and that's what is the number that I saw right here in Power BI, 1094 right here. Now, if I just happen to increase the decimal places, make that, let's say, 2 decimal places, you can see that I do match that number, 1093.56. Now, as of now, what I have been able to do is validate a ridiculously simple calculation that most of you will anyways otherwise feel confident about. But let's just try to kind of build slightly more trickier calculation, then try to validate that using Excel. Are we able to validate that or not? Now, as a second example, what I'd like to do is I would like to be able to find out that in the month of Jan, or any of these months that I have right here, please tell me what is the sales of the best selling product. I repeat my question once again. The question is, what is the sales of the best selling product in any of the given time periods that I have? Now, how do I do that? Now, before I start to solve this problem, I would want to kind of visualize the problem, get a hold of the problem, at least have a mental answer to the problem, and then I'll start to solve it. I'm going to copy this pivot table and put it on the right-hand side. Now, my question is that I would want to be able to find out what is the best selling product sales, right? So I am going to take the name of the product from the products table, put that in the pivot table right here. So product goes in right here, and I will expand it. And now I'm able to see that for every single month, for all the products that we have, what are the sales of the individual products? Now, obviously, because there are not too many products and I can also sort the data, I should be able to easily find out what's the sales of the best selling product, and which is right here, 270. This is the number that I'm choosing for the month of Jan. Let's take a look at for the month of Feb. The best selling product stood at 359. That's the sales. And maybe for March, the best selling product is 179 right here. So all of these numbers that I just took a look at, I would want to present the numbers right here on this pivot table. So here, against the sales of the entire month, I would want to take a look at the sales of the best selling product, which is 270 right here. And then in the next month, it was, I believe, 359. And that's the number that I would want to write it here. That's the problem that I would want to solve. I don't really want to slice my table by the product. However, I just want to pick up the best selling product and put that right here next to the sales of the entire month. That's the need, or that's the ask. How do I do that? Now, when such problems come to mind, obviously the function that comes to mind is probably something to do with max, because we are trying to find the best or the top, or we just want to go with max. So let's just try writing max. So I'm going to write something like best product sales. And I'm going to say something like, hey, do a max X, go in every single row of the sales table. And in every single row of the sales table, why don't you just trigger the current calculation that we have just done, which is nothing but my total sales, and just close the bracket and press enter. And that's my total sales calculation. Now, as soon as I drag this best product sales calculation in my pivot table, I'm expected to see the same numbers that I just spoke about, which is 270 for the month of Jan. I drag that to the pivot table, and what do I see? I don't see 270. However, I get to see the number 174. Now, this obviously isn't right. Now, before I go ahead and start to solve the problem, I would want to teach you that how do you start to debug problems using Excel? So let's just, for a moment, step back and run the 3 stages of the calculation that we just did a while ago to validate my sales once again on this calculation. What were the 3 stages? Stage number 1, we applied filters onto our data. So currently, right now, the number that I'm expected to see here is 270. And the filters on this number as of now are 2 filters coming from the calendar table. One is year of 2011, and another filter is the month of Jan. So before anything starts to happen, you would want to apply filters to your data set first. Let's just do that. So step number 1, I'm just going to jump over to Excel. And in Excel, I'll unfilter the data. This time, I would want to go ahead and apply 2 filters. One is the month of Jan, and the other one is 2011. That's the filters applied to the data. All right. Now, I will open up my DAX, and I'll start to evaluate the DAX. So what was my DAX? If you just kind of think about it, I wrote something like a maxx, and I say go in every single row of the sales table. In every single row of the sales table, please evaluate my total sales calculation. That's what my formula was. Now, this formula is going to run on the filter table, not on the entire table, in the current filter context, which is the month of Jan and 2011. Now, because you're saying, hey, step inside every single row of the sales table and calculate total sales. Let's just do that. Let's just exactly do what the measure is telling us to do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, hey, I actually have a built-in formula, which I am going to drag it across and copy it up and down everywhere. And I will say this is my price VLOOKUP, and this is my sales value. All right. And I'm going to apply the filters again. So 2011, the month of Jan, the filters have been applied. And now, when I do this calculation, go in every single row of the sales table. I did go in every single row of the sales table, and I did calculate sales, which is right here. I did that. Now, this little table that we have in front of us is throwing us a number of 174. Because we have used the maxx function, it must be picking up the maximum value in this sales value column. So if I happen to sort this from largest to smallest, you can see that the maximum value is actually 174. So far, I have not been able to solve the problem, but I have been able to understand why there is an error or a wrong number. This number happens to be not the sales of the best-selling product, but this number happens to be the sales of the best-selling transaction, however, because we wrote the formula that go inside every single row of the sales table, and every single row of the sales table means a transaction. So what you will get is the best-selling transaction, but not the best-selling product, right? You wrote the formula that way. Now, the problem is that I don't really want to go transaction by transaction by transaction. Once these filters have been applied, let's just go back to Power BI. So once these filters have been applied, which is 2011 and Jan, I would then want to summarize the data to the product level and then find out what's my best-selling product. Something like this. Visualize this. The 2 filters have been applied on the right. And right now, here, you're not taking a look at every single transaction. What you're taking a look at every single product. So I would want to summarize the data after these 2 filters have been applied. And then for every single product, I want to take a look at the sales value and then pick up the maximum value and then place it right here. That is what my objective is, right? I now understand that why is this a wrong number? And I also understand what do I need to do to correct it. In order for me to summarize the data, because as of now, the sales data is to the transaction level. It's not to the day level. It's not to the product level. We have to bring it up to the products level. The first thing that I would want to check in my data model that do I, in the first place, have a table which is already at the products level or not? Let's go validate that. I'm just going to go over to the data model, and I'm going to see that I have 3 tables. This table is at the transaction level. This table is at the day level. And this table is at the products level. That means one single row means one single product. And that's exactly what I need. So if I already have a table at the granularity or at the summarization, which I would want, I would rather reference that table instead. So I'm going to revise my calculation something like this. I'm going to say that, hey, please don't step inside every single row of the sales table. Please step inside every single row of the products table instead, because one row of the products table means one unique product. So I'm going to say, hey, why don't you just go ahead and step inside every single row of the products table. And once you're taking a look at individual products, find the total sales for every single product. find out whichever is the maximum, and then return that value to me. That's what this measure is going to do. I'm just going to go back and just revise my calculation. Where is this? Right here. I'm going to say, hey, this is going to be go in every single row of the products table, press enter, and that should give us the right answer that we were seeking, which is 270. That's nice. All right. So what we have been able to do is that we have been able to find out that using Excel, how do you actually take a look at what's happening under the hood, and how can you probably, to an extent, visualize DAX to an extent. The other question that I get, which is very, very often, is that, hey, as of now, you did have a products master or a products dimension table. Sometimes you may have it, sometimes you may not have it, depending upon the kind of data that you're working with. Now, what if you did not have the products dimension table? Then what would have your measure been? So what if this table did not exist? Then how could I still solve the problem? In that scenario, what I had to do was, in that scenario, I had to kind of use the sales table itself and then tell the sales table that, hey, sales table, I'm kind of wanting to summarize not to the granularity of the transactions. However, I would want you to roll back up to the products level. That's what I would do. So I have a function which is going to pretty much do the same thing. I'm just going to come right here. And I'm going to say that because I don't imagine it to be, I don't really have the products table. And I'll say that, hey, please remove the duplicates from the sales products column. So sales products ID, remove the duplicates. The values function exactly does that. Give me the unique products. And then after you get the unique products, then for every single product, why don't you find out the total sales? And then whatever sales is the maximum, then you drop it right here in my pivot table. This is actually going to give you the same answer on technique in case you don't really have masters that you're working with. So just works just okay. All right. Those were two examples. Still very simple, but let's just move over to a slightly more intense problem. Here is a problem. A while ago, I actually worked on an assignment for a SaaS company, and they had this requirement to calculate upgrades. So Microsoft is obviously a SaaS company, so they build a software, they ask you to buy it, but you don't get the access to the software one time. You have to pay a rent to avail that every single time. So that's a simple definition of what a SaaS company is. And in this particular data set that I'm working on, you can see that right now. Here is the data. And in this data right here, we have the transaction date, and we have the transaction ID, we have the user email, user ID, the version, and the product right here. Now, what I'd like to do is, I would want to be able to calculate upgrade. And just for a moment, if I try to explain you the data, in this data, every single customer is going to be billed once in a month for a product, for a version of the product. So you can take a look right now. In this data, I have two versions of products. We have a basic version and we have a professional version of the product. And then if you take a look at the name of the product, there are two different products or softwares that we have. We have a Productify and we have Supernotes. So these are two different softwares that we have. Every single piece of software that we have is going to have the basic version, and it's going to have the professional version of the product. And I would want to be able to find out that how many people moved up the pricing tier. That means you moved up from the base version to the professional version of the same product in the next month. That's what I would want to find out. How many people are there? So if you actually go ahead and take a look at the result that I have prepared, I've also prepared the result right here. And here you can see that I have just one single person who upgraded. Now, this is the answers that I have already given to you, but we'll try to kind of get hold of the answers in a way that helps us understand that how things are being evaluated in Excel. So if I just go over to Excel, in order for me to understand the problem, first of all, I will just try to frame the problem in Excel, try to manually work out the solution. And once I have been able to manually work out the solution, I'll then go reverse from there and try to build up my DAX from there. So I'm just going to go ahead and build up a very simple pivot table. So insert and then pivot table. Remember, my objective is to find out the upgrades. That means how many people moved up the pricing tier. So from the basic version to the professional version of the product. All right. So the first thing that I will do is I will apply a bunch of filters. So let's just say that on the transaction date, let's just put that in the rows for now. And I'm going to apply grouping on the date. And I'll say group it by the year and by the month. That's OK. And put that in the filter of the pivot table. And I am also going to say that please summarize this data by the user ID, by the email. Clean up this pivot table just a bit. I don't like it. Report tabular of. OK, this is good. And OK. Now let's just apply a bunch of filters. Now I already told you the answer that in the month of August that there is one person who's upgraded. So I definitely would want to reference check that with the month of July. Let me just take a look at the month of July. Then let me just take a look at the month of August. I should be able to find one guy who has upgraded. So I'm going to apply a filter for the month of July here. So I'll say, hey, this is going to be 2019. Say OK. This is going to be for the month of July. Say OK. All right, these are month of July people. Now these people, I also need to kind of get the product name here. OK, so these people should always be on the basic version of the product. So I will just apply a filter of the version right here. And this should be the basic version of the product, right? So, and I will just copy this pivot table and put it on the right. And I will say that this is going to be, let's say, year of 2020. The next month, which is the month of August, but this time the filter should be the professional version of the product. Doesn't really show anything. Let's just go take a look because this is 2020. This should be 2019 actually. All right. Now, if you take a look at the two pivot tables that I have made, in these two pivot tables, I will start to manually tally that. Let me just go find out that which people have upgraded. So if I take a look, in the month of July, all of these people were on the basic version of the product, all of these 3 people. I would want to be able to find out that are these people there in the next month, which is the month of August, on the professional version of the same product or not. So let's just go tally it up. So there's this guy 45697. Do I find that user ID right here? Right here? No, I don't find that. So that's canceled out. I have this ID 61639. Do I find that right here? I do find that right here. You can see that this guy was on a product called Productify. He was on the basic version of the product. But then in the next month, in the month of August, the same guy for the same product moved to the professional version of the product. That is definitely marked as an upgrade, right? And that's exactly what I have to do in Power BI as well. So this is a lot of manual work in Excel, and I would want to do that in Power BI as well. The first thing that I would want to do is I would want to kind of document what exactly have I done, and then try to frame a logic that is going to capture my thinking right here. Step number 1. This is not a single value output. This is a 3-row, 2-columnar table. So you have the first column as user ID, the second column as the product, and this is the output against which the next month's output is going to be compared against the same columns, the user ID and the product, the same columns, and number of rows as well. So what have I done here? I have the year as 2019. I have the date as, the month as, let's say, previous month. Now I write previous month because I wouldn't be able to hard code the month of July right here. I would be able to kind of reference it back relatively. So that's why I write previous month here. And then there's a filter that I have applied on this, which is nothing but the base version filter. That's the filter that I have applied right here. Additionally, you're going to see that this 2-columnar table is not the table that I started with. This 2-columnar table is sort of a summarized table. So if you take a look at the table that I started with, it's the full table, which is where, okay, my Excel is stuck. Okay, it's the full table, which is where I had the monthly sales data, which is where I had all the transactions, transaction ID, and all of the data along. But this table that I'm currently working with is just a summary table from that data, which is where I have 2 columns, the user ID and the product. So I also need to summarize my table by the user ID and the product, right? And this is the sort of conditions that I have written right here. And I'm just going to paste that condition on the right, and I'll start to write the conditions for the right-hand side table. So again, year month filter, this is the current month. The filter is going to be the professional version of the product. And again, summarize it by the current user ID and the product. All right. That's the filters. I mean, this is actually going to give me these set of conditions or filters are going to give me table number 1 and table number 2. And once I'm able to get these tables, then I will sort of find a way to check that how many rows are equal between the two tables. And once the rows are equal between the two tables, I will then be able to find out that what customers have upgraded. So let's just go tackle that in Power BI. I just go over to Power BI. And I am going to be writing a new measure. I think I've already written the measure for upgrades. I think it's a blank measure. I'll just try to feed that calculation in there. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to be doing is trying to create the first table right here. So if I just maybe open up Excel on the side, I'm going to be trying to create this table right here, the first table, right? Or let's just create the current month table. That's going to be slightly easier to create this table right here. So let's just create this table. So I'm going to be saying something like, first of all, I would like to summarize the table, which is my data. And I'd like to summarize it by 2 columns, which is nothing but my, let's say, user ID. And then I'd like to summarize it by my product. All right, that's my summarized table. All right. Now, once I summarize the table, which is this part done, then the next thing that I would want to do is I would want to apply a filter that I only want to keep the professional version of the product here. So let's just do that. I'm going to say that please calculate this table, the current table, which is nothing but this table, under a filter condition. And the filter condition is that the version of the product needs to be the professional version. So professional version, right? That's my filter condition. Now, you can see that as of now, there is one more filter that we have to apply, but I haven't really applied as of now, which is nothing but this filter, year of 2019 and the current month. You can see that this filter, which is the filter that I have to apply, but this filter will automatically come through my pivot table, which is there on the screen. So I'm just going to maybe kind of capture that as a variable. So var, this is my current month professional table. That's my first table. And then I'm just going to maybe return this table, which is current month professional table. I press enter. This gives me an error. And this gives me an error because in Power BI, you can't really return a table as an output, especially when you're trying to create a measure. A measure needs to accept a scalar or a single value. That means you can't really, in a single cell, feed a 2-columnar or a multi-row table. You can't really do that. So I need to aggregate this table to give me a single value output. Let's just do that. I'm going to maybe surround this in the count rows function temporarily, close the bracket and press enter. And I get the value as 2. I'm just trying to refer to the month of August continuously for now. So August 2019, I get the value 2. How do I know this value is right? Take a look at the filters. The filters that I've applied is professional version of the product in the current month, 2019. This is telling me that you have 2 rows of data. That means I did find 2 people on the professional version of the product. Let's just go test that. If I go take a look at this, I do find only 2 people in the month of August on the professional version of the product. So that means our measure is so far working just okay. All right. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now start to create this table on the left-hand side. This table is just one additional filter. That means it should be for the previous month, not for the current month. And then it needs to be of the base version, the user ID, and the product is the summarization level. So I'm going to copy this entire thing once again and paste it down. And I'm going to say this is my previous month base table. So previous month base table. And this table is going to have, again, the same 2 level of summarization, the user ID and the product. And the version is going to be the basic version. I believe that's what it is, basic version of the product. And let's just go test it out. This is going to be the PM base table. Press enter. I don't know if that's a base, I believe. All right. So if you now take a look in the month of, okay, what's wrong here? in the month, I don't think I've written the filters correctly. It should actually give me 3. August is giving me 5. Okay, let's just go take a look. This is correct. Base version. Okay. It's just that I haven't really applied the filter for previous month as of now. So I'm just going to say, hey, this needs to be also only taken a look at for the previous month. So a simple time intelligence would do. So calendar date. And that takes care of that. Okay, now please take a look. Here, if you take a look that in the month of August, I'm seeing the number 3. That means that it's trying to tell me that if you're looking at the previous month, which is the month of July, for the base version of the products, you had 3 customers. So let's just go validate that. I'll open up my Excel. For the month of July in 2019, for the base version, we did have 3 people, and that's exactly the number that I'm taking a look at in the current filter context, which is the month of August. Validated. The problem, however, is that I don't really want to aggregate these tables. I don't really want to do a count rows of the table. Before I do a count rows of the table, I want to do a check, and I want to see that, hey, please take a look at this table and take a look at this table, the 2 tables that I have created. Find out if there are any customers common between the 2 tables that I have created, and those are the exact customers who have upgraded. So how do I do that? There happens to be a very interesting function in Power BI called the intersect function. Take a look. It says that the intersect function is going to give you a table as an output, and it is going to take a look at the left side of the table. It's going to take a look at the right side of the table, and it's going to return the rows which appear in the right side of the table, which are also there in the left side of the table. So I'm going to say that, hey, why don't you take a look at the previous month table and then take a look at the current month table, and please find out, are there any rows which are common or not? And if there are any rows common, that's exactly the count that I would want, because I'm trying to find out how many customers upgraded. Press enter. And that is your beautiful number that we were trying to chase. That's the 1, that's the 2, that's the 4, that's the 4, so on and so forth. Right? So far, so good. We have been able to kind of build certain logic in Excel, and we have been able to carry that logic in Power BI as well. But how do I get the totals right? If you take a look at this table also shows you a total. That means it does count for the entire time period. That if you total up all of these numbers, you're going to get 71 people who have upgraded. But our measure doesn't really show people who have upgraded. So how do I actually get the totals here? The first thing that I have to do is I have to find out why in the first place are the totals not appearing? I mean, what's kind of stopping my DAX not to work at the total level? And once I have been able to understand the problem, I will then again do some debugging, checking, and testing, and then I'll try to come up with a solution. For which I have to open up Tabular Editor. So I'm just going to go over to Tabular Editor. Sorry, DAX Studio. In case you haven't really worked with DAX Studio, it's a fantastic tool. Marco did. Yes, the new version. I hope it doesn't break on me. That's going to be a good test for the new product. But yeah, let's see. The new version is out. There's a black mode also, and pretty cool, nice little interface and stuff like that. So it's very, very good for taking a look at your queries. All right, we work with a bit of DAX Studio here. Let's just take a look. So I'm usually able to put this on the right. Okay. Results. Okay. Okay, I think we should be able to work with this. I'm usually able to store this on the right. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Okay, cool. All right, nice. Let's go step by step. Once again, I'll just minimize this, go back to my Power BI. The totals are not working. This is not working. Why? What I'm going to do is I'll run the 3-stage filter context once again, and I will say that, hey, what is happening at this level? So this measure that we have been able to write, when this measure, I'll just copy that measure, Control C, and open up my notepad, cancel everything, paste that measure right here. When this measure actually reaches the total level, it starts to give me a blank. Why is that? Now, first thing that I have to do is I have to start writing. I have to start to create the filter context first, and then try to evaluate parts of this measure. That what exactly is this happening to this measure at the total level? Now, if you know that at the total level, there is no filter context available. So this is the totals, and this gets evaluated on the entire table of the data. So what happens is that if I just go over to the DAX Studio right here, and if I just click on, let's say, evaluate, and I have to say, hey, evaluate the entire data, I am just going to run this query, and this is what the measure, this is what is the filter context or the result of the data at the total level. So at the total level, there is no filter of any month. There is no filter of any month. It's the entire table is being evaluated. Let me just do my calculation, which I have written in my notepad right here. Let's just take a look at what happens at the total level. So I'll just go here right here, and I'm just going to maybe copy this part of the calculation, Control C, and I'm just going to paste that right here. Now I'm saying that, why don't you create a table? Let's just cancel that. Why don't you create a table? And in that table, I would want you to go ahead, find the base version of the product for the previous month. But this right now is going to be evaluated without any filter context, assuming we were trying to do it at the total level where there is no filter context. And right now in DAX Studio, there is no filter context, right? So I'm just going to click on run, and this actually gives me a blank, and there's nothing that you get right here. The reason why is that because we have a previous month filter. At the total level right here, at the total level right here, there is no context of the previous month. You can't really go back to a previous month unless you have the current month in the filter context. That's the reason why it's blank. And because one of the tables is blank, the measure actually gives you a blank value. So how do I solve this problem? Now, the solution of this problem is that the measure is working just fine at the individual month levels, just okay. What I would want the measure to do is, as soon as the measure reaches the total level, without any filter context, then what should happen is that the measure should take a look at this table, which it has just left behind, and take a look at every single upgrade that it just calculated and sum all of these values up and write number 71 right here. That is what should happen at the total level. How do I make it happen? Now, the way to make it happen is that as soon as the measure, whatever measure that we're going to write, reaches at the total level, it should not take a look at the entire table. It should actually take a look at this particular table, this table. And once it takes a look at this table, then we can say that, hey, once you have this 2-columnar table and the upgrades have been calculated, then why don't you take a sum of this column right here, which we can easily do that. So our job is to create this table without any filter context in DAX Studio. And DAX Studio is a tool to be able to create queries or tables. So we should be able to create that. Let's just take a look. Step number one, if I want to create this table is summarized by the month and the year. That's exactly what I would want to do. So I'm just going to say that, hey, why don't you start with the summarize function? And I would want to summarize my data. And I would want to summarize by the calendar. And there's a column that happens to be there, which is the month year column. Please summarize my data as per that. I'm going to format this DAX. I'm just going to run it. And I get this table right here. Now you can see that without any filter context, there is no filter context in DAX Studio, and I'm able to get this table. The next job is going to be to create this upgrades column. And I'm going to form the same pattern that I have done just a while ago for every single month context right here. How do I do that? Let's just go ahead and start to create another function called the add columns function. And I'm going to say that this is the table to which I'm adding a column called upgrades. Let's do that. So this is a table. To this table, I'm adding a column called upgrades. And what's the logic of calculating upgrades? For now, I'm just writing one and creating run on that. Let's see if that runs well or not. Should be okay. I think I'm missing out a bracket. Okay, good. Okay, now, as of now, this one doesn't make any sense, but I just wrote the one to kind of initiate the calculation. This is the place where I have written one, is the place where I will write some DAX that is actually going to calculate these numbers and put these numbers right here. Okay, so let's just do that. How did I calculate that in the first place? I was saying something like I created a variable and I called that variable is the current month pro table. And what was the function? I said it's equals to summarize. Let's just copy that. Let's just not write all of that again. I'm going to say this. Let's just copy the variables as well. So Control C, paste that right here. All right. And let's just run that. I'm just going to click. I hope it's right. Brackets are good. Okay, let's just run that. Now this query doesn't really run. It actually throws me an error. The reason why it actually gives me an error is because if I just show you this particular calculation, which is the calculate table function, is giving us a table as an output. It's not giving us a single value as an output. And you can't really feed an entire table. Remember this, the current version professional table had a couple of customers that we were able to take a look at in Excel. You can't really have the list of the customers with 2 columns right here. So I need to aggregate this table. So I also, the return function is missing, but I also need to aggregate that. So I'll just say return, and I'll say, hey, why don't you just do the count rows of the CM row table? And that should hopefully work. Now I'm able to get the same answer, which I was getting it earlier. In the month of August, there are 2 people on the professional version of the product. Let's just create the other variable as well. So I'll just copy that, Control C, and I'll just paste that as well right here. This is good. And now I'm just going to do that intersect that I was just speaking about. Control C and just paste that intersect right here. Hopefully that should just run fine. Okay, it's still not running. I believe we have to declare a variable for this. So this is variable previous month base table. All right. And that's good. All right. And that's the table that we have been able to create at the total level. So now, without any filter context, we have been able to create the table. This table is going to fit at the total level. And at the total level, I can say, hey, you're seeing the entire table. Why don't you just sum the upgrades column of this table? Now, how do I utilize this table? I'm just going to take all of this table, leaving aside the evaluate part, just go feed that in my DAX. And this is not going to run as of now because this is actually giving you a table as an output. However, I would want to have a single value as an output. So I'm just going to maybe feed this in the sumX function. And I'm going to say, hey, sumX, I am just giving you a table to work with, which has these 2 columns. I'm giving you a table to work with, which has got the 2 columns. And in this table that I have just pasted right here, please sum the upgrades column. All right. And I am just going to go ahead and say that this please sum the upgrades column. Close that, press enter. And that should hopefully give me the sweet little answer that I was trying to chase. All right. That was pretty much it. Christian, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, there was a question. Let me share my screen. And it's directly related to the intersect, the function that I never used in DAX. From Luciana, for the upgrade problem, would it work if we use calculate table in place of intersect to filter the first table by the second? If not, why?
Generally speaking, the way the intersect function works is that it has the property to take a look at 2 tables and tell you which rows are there in which table and do the rows match or not. I'm not sure how are you going to do that with calculate table function, because the second input of the calculate table function is the ability to apply filters to shorten the table. I'm sure there must be a way to do that, but in case you have a direct function available intersect, you should be able to do that with that function.
Oh, this is pretty much it from the question. Maybe someone else has another question in the chat, because otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian.
It's been an amazing session. Loved it. And it's pretty close, but much better explained than what I'm doing, because I'm also using Excel to do my calculation first, to know what to get to, but it's much better presented from your side.
Thank you,
Loved it.
Christian. Thank you,
Loved
Christian.
it. Uh, yeah, Claire, I will need a little light down. That kind of rule. So the feedback is great. Thanks again, and we'll spend a few more minutes for the Enterprise DNA raffle. Let me put up the report. I have a Power BI report, which is actually getting data from a SharePoint list where all the data is collected from the forms that everybody filled up. Let me refresh it. And I see the crowd today is pretty international. So we have North America, South America, South Africa, India, Middle East, and Europe. Pretty international. And by the way, I'm not sure you were busy with the presentation, but we just passed 1,000 members today. So
On the Meetup group.
yeah,
That's
which
awesome.
is really cool.
That's awesome.
So let's see. Usually in the first sessions, I was using also Power Apps to randomize the IDs. I'm not doing it anymore because I found a bug and I still haven't had time to fix it. Therefore, we will use something else, but let's make sure that we have all the participants in place. Going with Power Query to get the participants, Control Shift plus, refresh again, and putting this in the wheel of names. Rita Brata, please ask your question meanwhile. Raji, I'm not sure. I think I missed your question. Yeah. Chandeep, are you able to see the chat?
I'm able to see the chat, yes.
Yeah, there is a question from Ajit George.
Aji, I would have declared the variables at the beginning and wondered why it didn't work. When would you declare the variables inside the query? Are you talking about the query that I wrote in the DAX editor in DAX Studio? Aji? Okay. Um, the reason why I would declare a variable is because it just makes it more manageable to contain parts of the logic. That's why I would declare variables. So if it's just modulating the code, so if you're writing a piece of code that is self-contained in its own way, and you would want to reuse that later again and again, you can just place that in a variable. Now note that if you happen to declare a variable and that variable is going inside some sort of iterator function, then that variable is not going to change. Or if it's going inside of the calculate function, it's not going to change its behavior because it has been calculated in the outer filter context. So that's a bit of you know trial and error that we'll have to do. But generally, I would tend to declare variables for whatever is a self-contained logic, feed that as a variable, and then reuse them again and again. So it's just a way of doing. I mean, although I could have very well written a gigantic piece of code and use the intersect and count rows on top of everything that I wrote, but then I just found the variables to be helpful in terms of understanding the code. So that's why I wrote it.
And there is another question related to extracting the URL link from a web page where there are multiple HTML type tables inside. Well, not sure if this can be answered.
Yeah, I mean,
on the top of the head, but I'm pretty sure you'll
can you
can
okay,
guide him.
I have the link here that you have sent it to me. I'll try to work it out and probably create a video.
Okay, thank you very much.
This. Yep.
So in the raffle, we have 12 participants in the end. Let's copy all of them and go to the wheel of names. Paste all of them. Shuffle everything several times and spin the wheel. Luciana, you are the first winner. Congratulations. Really cool. Okay, let's shuffle again and spin the wheel. Ciprian from Romania, you're the second winner for the day. Congrats. I really hope all of you winning the membership will use it because the content there, it's really great. So let's shuffle again with the remaining participants. Spin it. Rita Brata, congrats. You're the third winner in the. I will contact you after the meetup for confirming the email address. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Chandeep, for coming back to the Romania Power BI user group. I hope you'll come again, probably next year.
I hope so. Yes.
Meanwhile, everyone, please follow Chandeep on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Check up his blog and subscribe to his YouTube channel because the content he's publishing for free is just wow. Thank you all for coming to this anniversary meetup, 1,000 users on Romania Power BI user group, and see you in September.